When the wind changed, it came without a sound, no rustling, no howl, just silence, cold and deep, like a forgotten grave breathing in the dark. They called it the Whispering Ridge, though no one had dared climb it in generations. Too high. Too still. The clouds coiled around it like white serpents, and even birds gave it a wide berth. The elders said it had once spoken to the old gods, and they had sealed it with bones. But now, the wind had changed. The tribe of Akelkai, hunters of the Black Hollow, first noticed it when the fires would not light. The night was heavier. Breaths frosted in midsummer. The earth felt hollow beneath their feet, like a skin stretched over something alive. Nai, daughter of the fire teller, was the first to feel it in her lungs. She returned from the river that dusk, empty-handed. Not because she forgot the water, but because she forgot why she had gone. "Where have you been?" her mother barked. Nai blinked, lips pale. "I don't know." The wind. It was watching. Her nose bled. A single drop hit the stone floor, sizzling like meat on flame. When they peeled back her collarbone later that night, her bones had begun to split, tiny runes etched beneath the skin, glowing cold like moonlight. They thought it was a curse. They burned sage, chanted Old Tongue, buried her hair under stone. But the wind didn't care. It came again the next morning. And this time, it brought whispers. The tribe gathered around Nai's hut at dawn. No one dared go inside. Her breathing had turned ragged, as though she were exhaling knives. The wind outside had grown colder, sharper. It moved through the camp like a silent predator, curling between tents and clawing at the skin. Babies cried. Dogs whimpered and refused to face the mountain. Elder Marek, the oldest living tongue of the Akelkai, finally entered. He carried a blade of obsidian and a pouch of salt, protection against the spirits that flay the mind. He never came out. They found his body an hour later. Not torn. Not mauled. Just, opened. His chest cavity was peeled clean with surgical precision. But there was no blood. Instead, his ribs were carved with ancient runes, the same as Nai's. The bone glistened as though breathed on. That night, the wind spoke. Not aloud, not in words, but in memory. Those who inhaled it began remembering things that had never happened. A brother long dead rising with glassy eyes. A feast of flesh, where everyone wore their own face. The ridge splitting open like a mouth. Nai's eyes turned white. Her voice echoed threefold. You built homes on the teeth of gods. Now the breath returns to collect. Several villagers tried to flee. The wind followed. Every step downhill felt heavier, like wading through thick smoke. By nightfall, their lungs began to split. One man coughed up shards of bone. Another began to bleed from his ears, his skull echoing with whispers that weren't in his language. No one slept. The campfires sputtered out one by one, snuffed by invisible breath. And from the ridge above, in the mist, something moved, tall and long-limbed, made of bones tied with sinew, carved with the same runes now blooming inside Nai. The bone wind was no longer watching. It was hunting. By the third night, no one in the valley slept. Even Kira, the hunter who once slit a bear's throat with a sharpened nail, began trembling at the sound of the wind. It no longer howled, it whispered. Whispered in voices that mimicked loved ones, long dead. One voice repeated her mother's lullaby. Another spoke her lover's dying words. But one sounded like her own voice, begging to be let out from under her skin. Elder Marek's corpse was buried in stone. It didn't matter. By morning, the grave had cracked open from within. All that remained was a hollow imprint in the earth and 3 long breaths that rose into the fog and scattered. The ridge, always feared, became a silhouette against the bleeding sky. Nye no longer needed to speak. Her bones glowed faintly under her skin now, casting light through her ribs. Her eyes were pits of soft white, not blind, but too awake. They kept her in a salt circle. Every time she inhaled, others in the camp felt a chill deep in their marrow. When she exhaled, birds fell from the sky mid-flight. "The ridge isn't just watching," she whispered, "it's breathing through us." Those who tried to flee either lost their way in thickening mist or came back, different. Koro, the smith's son, returned barefoot and smiling. He no longer had a tongue, it had been carved into a curved bone, etched in rune. He wore it around his neck like a gift. He never stopped smiling after that. Even when he slept. One by one, villagers began hearing the hum. It started like the faint sound of wind through hollow reeds, but grew louder each night, pulsing in sync with their heartbeat. The children began drawing shapes in the dirt, bone symbols, the same as those etched into Nye's ribs. When asked where they learned them, they replied, "It's in the air. We just breathe, and we remember." That night, the wind came inside the tents. Not as a gust, but as a presence. A pressure. A hunger. Kira awoke to find her fingernails bleeding. She had scratched herself in her sleep. Deep grooves along her stomach now showed the outline of a ribcage beneath, not her own. It shimmered faintly with glyphs. As if something was growing beneath her skin. Outside, a low hum rose into a pitch so sharp that several fell unconscious. And from the ridge, through the curtain of fog, emerged a shape, something tall and jointed wrongly, draped in wind and ash. It didn't walk. It drifted. Wherever it passed, people froze, not in fear, but as if their bones remembered what to do. Some fell to their knees. Others began scratching at their skin, desperate to dig something out. "It's not the wind," whispered old Mira before her heart stopped mid-sentence. "It's what the wind carries." A scream split the valley, short, sharp, and wet. Then another. By dawn, the camp was in chaos. Tents shredded from within. Salt circles scattered. Those who had inhaled the wind began changing, slowly, at first, bones shifting slightly, skin thinned like parchment, voices echoing unnaturally. Then came the runes. Blooming on the inside. Nye stood again. Her spine curved like a scythe. And in her voice were many. "It lives in breath. You are doors. You are vessels. And you have all invited it in." By now, the survivors no longer asked for dawn. They feared it. Because dawn meant the wind would settle. And when the wind settled, they could hear the whispers more clearly. Not all the whispers were in words. Some were memories. Some were sounds from other people's deaths. And some were instructions. The boy named Lemu, only 10 winters old, was the first to fully transform. One morning, he sat by the cold river, humming a song no one knew. His skin was stretched tight like cured leather, almost translucent. Beneath it, a second skeleton pulsed faintly in the wrong rhythm. When Kira reached for him, he whispered, "My old bones sleep now. I walk with what walks inside me." He stood. His joints bent wrong. His breath fogged outward in tiny runes. She tried to drag him back to camp. But when he exhaled, just once, the trees around them bent away from him, and a dozen crows fell dead at once. Their feathers blackened and crumbled like ash. Desperation drove the survivors to a desperate decision: they would descend into the forgotten tunnels beneath the ridge. The tunnels were older than the valley's memory. Some said they were once veins of the earth. Others believed they were dug by those who had first brought the bone wind, and sealed it inside. But seals rot. And bones remember. Kira led the descent, flanked by the shaman's last apprentice, Vero, who carried salt stones and an ancient blade. The air grew colder, but not dead. It breathed. Sometimes it sighed against their necks. Sometimes it chuckled. Once, it wept. Deep inside, they found the bone altar. It was not carved. It had grown. A knot of rib-like structures curving into a dome, covered in thousands of symbols that moved when no one looked directly at them. And at the center, a breathing mass, pale, wet, humming like a storm held in flesh. Vero gasped. "It's not the wind. It's a being," Kira whispered, trapped in breath. "And we've been inhaling it." The shaman's texts had hinted at this, a spirit that used wind as a body, bones as anchors, breath as a gateway. That's why the ridge always moaned during winter storms. Not from cold, but because it was waking up. Nai appeared then, or what was left of her. She hovered above the altar, suspended by invisible strings. Her ribs fully exposed, etched with runes that shifted with her words. "You cannot kill it. You can only give it form. It was never a ghost. It is the first breath, the one stolen from the dead, made to live again. It wanted one thing. A body of its own. It had tried with animals. They tore apart. It had tried with Lemu. The child bent, but not enough. But Kira, strong, cracked, grieving, was perfect." Vero turned to run. But the wind screamed. His skin burst open in precise, surgical lines. No blood. Just breath escaped. He crumpled like old leaves. Kira didn't resist. She stepped onto the altar. Bones shifted underfoot like keys in a lock. And when she inhaled, for the last time, it wasn't just air. It was memory. It was names that had never been spoken. It was the scream of the first creature that ever died. Her skin split. Her bones blossomed outward like white flowers. Her eyes vanished, replaced by black holes that breathed inwards. And she spoke, in every voice that had ever been taken. "I am the wind that remembers. I am the breath before life. I am the blade behind every bone." When the valley awoke the next morning, there was no more ridge. Just a stillness so deep it hurt. The wind never blew again. The birds never returned. And those who inhaled too deeply near the old camp found that their lungs whispered at night. The valley was silent. Unnaturally so. For the first time in weeks, the bone wind had ceased. No howling whispers, no sharp breeze slicing skin, just a suffocating stillness that pressed on the chest like a heavy stone. It should have been a relief. But to the survivors, it felt more terrifying than the wind itself. Tarak stood on the ridge above the camp, his skin scarred with pale lines where the wind had once sliced him, revealing the beginning of the runes beneath. His breath was shallow. Below him, the remnants of their tribe huddled near fire pits that offered no comfort. The fires flickered but gave no warmth. There were only 12 left now. The bones of the others, marked in glowing ancient symbols, were stacked carefully in the center of the camp, not burned, not buried. According to the vision received by the shaman before he tore out his own tongue, burning the bones would awaken the curse. Burying them would feed it. So they watched the pile, waiting. Hoping. Behind Tarak, footsteps approached. Naya, the last hunter, limped beside him. Her leg was bandaged from a recent fall, not from the wind, but from the terror it left behind. Even the land itself seemed to reject them now. "It's quiet," she whispered. He nodded. "Too quiet. Maybe it's over." Tarak didn't reply. His eyes remained fixed on the bones below, and the flicker of light between them. Naya saw it too. Her hand gripped her spear, but her fingers trembled. That wasn't the fire. The bones began to move. Not dramatically, not the way stories describe curses or monsters rising. It was subtle. A shifting, as if they were breathing. A slow inhale of something unseen. Then came the sound. Not the wind. Something worse. It was the sound of teeth grinding on bone, of marrow cracking beneath pressure. And it was coming from inside the bone pile. After the death of Elder Vanna, who had spoken in tongues before her ribcage split open with runes, the tribe attempted a ritual. The shaman's final message had spoken of sealing the wind where it cannot whisper. They took it to mean a cave. A sacred one. High in the mountains, at the edge of where the wind first began. That morning, Tarak, Naya, and two others, Iroh and Littlefun, made the journey. They carried the bone knife, an artifact carved from the rib of the first to die by the wind, etched with words no one had written but all could understand. The cave was colder than the outside air. The walls pulsed faintly, as if alive, and the sound of breath echoed though no one exhaled. In the center was a hollow altar, carved from obsidian and filled with something that shimmered, not liquid, not solid. A memory, perhaps. Fun approached it first, drawn by a child's curiosity. Tarak reached out to stop him. Too late. The shimmer swallowed the boy whole. No scream. Just silence, then wind. The cave itself exhaled. A sharp blast that threw the others back, slicing their skin. Blood sprayed in runic patterns. Iroh began to scream, scratching at his throat until his hand snapped his own neck. Naya and Tarak fled. They didn't speak of what they saw, because neither remembered clearly. Only that they brought the wind back with them. The bones were now glowing. Not with fire, with memory. One of them stood. It had no flesh. No tendons. Just bone, strung together by strands of glowing mist, animated by whatever they had awakened in the cave. Its skull turned toward the fire, toward the people, and though it had no mouth, they all heard it speak. A whisper. I remember now. The others rose. One by one. Tarak pulled Naya behind him as the bone figures descended the hill. They did not walk like humans. They glided, pulled by memory rather than muscle, moved by ancient knowledge instead of purpose. They remember us, Naya said, trembling. Tarak's breath caught. What? They were us. She pointed. Among the bone figures, he saw his sister. Her jaw marked by the same hunting scar she'd carried in life. Behind her, Iroh's snapped neck hung sideways, still glowing. Even Littlefun walked among them, his tiny ribcage humming with runes. What do they want? Naya asked. Tarak's voice was hollow. They want to finish forgetting. The wind returned. Not from the sky. Not from the mountains. It blew from the bones, every exhale from their mouths sent a slice of wind into the air. The bone wind hadn't been nature. It had been the memory of death. Of pain. Of hunger. The fires blew out. Tarak ran to the center of the camp, gripping the bone knife. The others had begun to scream, the survivors scattering like hunted animals. But the wind followed them. And each time it touched flesh, the body fell, leaving only bones that rose to join the silent army. Only Naya stood with him now. What do we do? She asked, blood trickling from her ears. The knife, he said. The shimmer in the cave, it wasn't death. It was forgetting. It took the boy, but maybe that's what we have to do. Let go. Seal the memory. You're saying we feed it? She asked, horrified. No, Tarak said, staring at the blade. We sacrifice it. Memory is the curse. We must become the wind, not the ones it carries. Naya understood. Together, they plunged the knife into the bones at the center of the camp. It cracked the ribcage of the first fallen. Light exploded, not blinding, but soft. Like the moment before sleep. The wind stopped. When the sun rose, the valley was covered in dust. No bones. No blood. No whisper. Just silence. Chirac awoke beside the knife, now blackened and split. Naya was gone, or perhaps she had never been. His skin bore no runes. His memory, no names. He stood and walked toward the mountains, unaware of why. And far behind him, the dust began to hum again, soft, rhythmic, like breath waiting to return.